Yes, we've been playing this game. PPSSPP is an emulator of the PlayStation Portable, the PSP, on our tablets, our phones, our PCs. So today I'm going to talk about the history of the PPSSPP, the PlayStation Portable simulator suitable for playing portably. Now, this is a free open source emulator that allows you to play PlayStation Portable games on your own device. As in, what it does is that it essentially emulates the original hardware and gives you better quality depending on your device. In 2005, Sony released the PlayStation Portable, a handheld gaming device so ambitious it seemed almost impossible. Full 3D games, wireless connectivity, a UMD disk drive in the palm of your hand. It sold 80 million units. Sony discontinued it in 2014, and then a Swedish developer named Henrik Rydgård made sure he never died. He built an emulator so good, so fast, so precise that today millions of people play PSP games on their phones, tablets and PCs in better qualities than original hardware ever managed, like I said in the beginning of the video. Now, the creation of this emulator changed what it means to preserve gaming history. Now, the PlayStation Portable was Sony's first ever serious entry into the handheld gaming market, and it arrived swinging. At launch in 2005, it offered a level of graphical fidelity that had never been seen in a handheld device. Games like God of War, Chains of Olympus, Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII, Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, and Grand Theft Auto Liberty stories pushed the hardware to limits that seemed implausible for a device that fit in a jacket pocket. The PSP built a devoted community, particularly in Japan and parts of Asia where handheld gaming culture was strongest. Monster Hunter especially became a cultural phenomenon on PSP in Japan, where players gathering in public spaces to hunt together via local wireless network. But Sony's support for the platform eventually waned. The PSP successors, the PlayStation Vita, launched in 2012 and faced an uphill battle against smartphone gaming. By 2014, Sony has officially discontinued the PSP. Millions of people still had their libraries, their save files, their memories of games they played for hundreds of hours, and no new hardware to play them on. Then came the man, the hero, Henrik Rydgård, known online as Rydgård. Is a Swedish developer and a graphics programmer with a deep background in emulation. Before PPSSPP, he had worked on Dolphin, the GameCube and Wii emulator, and has spent years understanding the complex challenge of making one piece of hardware convincingly pretend to be another. In 2012, while the PlayStation Portable was still technically in production, Rydgård began producing a PSP emulator. His goals were ambitious from the start, not just compatibility but performance. He wanted PPSSPP to run on hardware that was significantly less powerful than a PC, specifically on Android phones at full speed. This was technically demanding in ways that most emulator developers avoid. Android devices in 2012 had limited processing power, unlike the ones we have today. PSP games had been designed to push Sony's custom hardware to its limit. Making an Android phone emulate that hardware in real time at playable speeds required innovative solutions at every level of the software stack. Rydgård wrote custom graphic backends. He optimized the CPU emulation core. He works with contributors from around the world who shared his vision of a fast, accurate, accessible PSP emulator. In 2012, the first ever public version of the PPSSPP was released. It ran faster than any PSP emulator that had come before it. One of Rydgård's most important decisions was to release PPSSPP as open source software under the GPL license. This meant that any developer in the world could read the code, suggest improvements, and contribute directly to the project. The response was extraordinary. Developers from across the world contributed optimization, optimizations, bug fixes, new features, and platform ports. PPSSPP rapidly expanded from Android and Windows to iOS, macOS, and Linux, and even less conventional platforms. The open source model was also built trust. Users could verify that PSP contained no malware, no hidden data collection, no malicious code. In a space where emulators had historically been distributed through shady websites alongside dubious software, PPSSPP's open source, clean, GitHub hosted distribution was revolutionary. Today, PPSSPP has been downloaded over 150 million times across all platforms. It supports the vast majority of PPSSPP of the PSP's commercial game library with high compatibility. Many games run better in PPSSPP than they did on original PSP hardware, with higher resolution rendering, texture filtering, and stable frame rates that the original hardware itself could never have achieved. Here is the question that follows emulation. Is it legal? The honest answer is it's a bit complicated. PPSSPP itself, the emulator software, is completely legal. There is no Sony code in PPSSPP. Rydgård and his contributors wrote every line from scratch through a process called clean room implementation, studying how the PSP hardware behaves without copying Sony proprietary code. Emulators are legal. This has been established in multiple court cases, most notably the 1999 case of Sony Computer Entertainment America versus Connectix Corporation, which affirmed that creating a compatible emulator through clean room implementation does not violate copyright. The gray area lies in game ROMs, the digital copies of UMD games. Downloading a ROM of a game you don't own is copyright infringement in most jurisdictions. Dumping a ROM from a disk you legally own is a legal gray area that varies by country. PPSSPP itself does not distribute ROMs. It does not endorse piracy. It's a tool, and like any other tool, its legality depends on how it is used. What PPSSPP ambiguously represents is game preservation, ensuring that the PSP's extraordinary library of games can be played, studied, and enjoyed long after Sony's hardware has been turned to dust. The PPSSPP sits at the center of a much larger conversation. The gaming industry is finally beginning to take seriously game preservation. Unlike film, music, or literature, video games are uniquely vulnerable to disappearing. When hardware becomes obsolete, the game designed for it become inaccessible. Publishers rarely maintain back catalogs, server shutdown, physical media degrades. Emulators like PSP are in many cases the only reason games from the PSP eras remain playable today. Nintendo has taken an aggressive legal stance against emulation in recent years, filing lawsuits against emulator developers and ROM sites. The gaming community has pushed back, arguing that the preservation of cultural artifacts is a legitimate and necessary pursuit. Rydgård has continued developing PPSSPP through all of this, releasing updates, adding features, maintaining compatibility without corporate backing, without a subscription fee, without microtransaction. PPSSPP is free. It always has been. I want to use this moment in the video to thank the man, Henrik Rydgård. This man made all of our childhoods. Like, one of the first time I ever got hands on the game was the PPSSPP. And that emulator is one of the best out there. When Henrik Rydgård built, what he built is not just an emulator, it is a time machine. It is the reason a 15-year-old in Lagos, Manila, or Port Harcourt can pick up a phone today and play Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII, or God of War Chains of Olympus. Games released before they were born on hardware that no longer exists, in better quality than the players who bought it new in 2005. This is an extraordinary gift to gaming culture, and it cost him nothing to give, only time and craft and the belief that great games deserve to be remembered. I say once again, Henrik Rydgård, thank you for existing in my lifetime. Now, the PSP was discontinued in 2014, but right now, on phones, on tablets, and PCs across the world, its games are running because one developer decided they were worth saving, because an open source community decided to help, because the gaming community pushed back, because some things are too good to let disappear. PPSSPP didn't just preserve the PSP, it proved that gaming history belonged to everyone. If PPSSPP has ever brought back a gaming memory, like and subscribe and tell us what was the first ever PSP game you played on it.